Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Out of the Box. The advocate of relativism and change, and the foe of bigotry and monotony. These are some of the nicknames that may be given to our star today. Our star today is none but Fredrick Nietchze, the notorious Fredrick Nietchze, the great philosopher and thinker who lived in the 19th century in Germany. He called for relative points of views about everything. He called for change. He was against any kind of stagnant, classic or conservative thinking, and definitely against all forms of classic religion and belief. To shed more light on Fredrick Nietchze in this first part, because to really sum up all his thoughts, it would be almost impossible to do it in one episode. So today, in part one of our discussion of the great philosopher Fredrick Nietchze, really delighted to be accompanied by Ahmad Barsoum, the free thinker and writer. Ahmad, hello and welcome to the program.
Mohammed, hello, and thank you so much for allowing me this chance to join you on such a journey of intellect and knowledge. And also thanks to all your audience and followers for the chance that they give me as well to be with them and you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you. Now, to start off, like my usual very classic question is, was Fredrick Nietchze a man of his time?
Well, you are discussing today one of the most delightful philosophers to me personally, and for the school of philosophy in general. And we always say that the philosophy before Nietzsche is an era, and after Nietzsche is another era. So he came and opened the door for real criticism of all social and religious behaviors that have been all over Europe, especially since the civilization started in Greece. So I see Nietzsche was not a man of his time, was ahead of his time by hundreds of years. Not just 100 years, hundreds of years. He is a man of vision that nowadays people started to realize the importance of his thoughts and ideas towards our life. So definitely, by all means, I would recommend him to be the philosopher of these days as well.
And do you think that he was provoked by something, or he had some form of a muse maybe? Like he lived in the 19th century in Germany. It was a time of political turmoil in many different parts around the world. And again, it was industrial revolution. The very tight grip of the church or the theologians started to weaken. So do you think that any of this provoked him?
Definitely. Remember that Nietzsche came after Descartes and Arthur Schopenhauer. And actually, those two philosophers affected his thoughts very much. If you look at his writings and his ideas, you'll find them, it's a kind of modernizing Schopenhauer and Descartes as well. So he has been influenced by them much, and has been influenced by the, as you said, Industrial Revolution in Europe at that time, and also by the revolution in art and in the church itself. Mm-hmm. Because the mid of the 19th century was the era where everything ended up with the Bohemian movements and the great artistic movements in the world, in painting, sculpture, music even. So yes, he was resident of this crossing time from dark eras to the real modern and basement or the establishment of civilization as we know it now.
Absolutely. Before we delve deeper into thoughts, do you think, like, if we sort of take a glimpse at his autobiography, like his family, his bringing up, did it play a role? His parents, did they play a role?
Yes, he grew up in a very religious family. His father was a priest, and that actually shaped his mind at early age about how to follow a religion and how to be obedient to God and what is rituals around the religion that he was following. I believe he was Catholic. So this uprise in this kind of family, religious family, made him rebellious, actually. More rebellious than member of a religious family. His mother had a very bad relationship with him because his attitude towards the church and towards the religion itself. And these things actually happened early in his life. It didn't start later on when it was manifested in his writings later on. However, before that, he was definitely against the tyranny of the church at that time, or all times, and against the submission. He was against submission to church.
Well, like his upbringing, of course, there's a big difference in time, about like 400 years or so. But like if we compare him to someone like Martin Luther, who grew up in, like his father aspired for him to become a theologian and member of the clergy and whatnot. And then he actually became one. But he revolted and he called for, the change of everything. And he called upon the, sacred Roman emperor to have one God, one Christ, one brotherhood of believers, and one script, and one God, and which led to the Reformation. And then later on came the Counter-Reformation. Do you see any resemblance between Nietzsche's life? But actually, Martin Luther called for reformation, but Fredrick Nietzsche maybe took the extreme. He did not call for reformation, just called for demolishing the whole paradigm.
Yes, it was demolition of religion. And I don't see any kind of resemblance for one reason. Resemblance, I mean, because maybe the end result was similar. However, Martin Luther was a clergyman. He studied the science of the religion in itself, the deep thoughts of the Catholic Church. Yes, exactly, of the Catholic Church. And through his studies and becoming a priest, he realized, and he was a monk actually, so he realized what is wrong with the idea of the Catholic Church, ideas of the Catholic Church. However, but he reformed it, as you said, he reformed the ideas to suit what he believed was right. Because we are not going to compare Catholicism and Protestant now, but just we say that he reformed it to suit what he thought was right. According to Nietzsche's ideas and writings, it's different. Nietzsche grew up in a religious family, but he went to university and he was never a clergyman. And he never studied theology. But he believed in the mankind himself can create his own belief, can create his own vision in life without the need of a creator. They are believing in oneself. So if you follow your oneself in the right way, of course, that will definitely give you better results in life than following a certain religion. He demolished the idea of religion and went to be more of realistic and more human believer in humanity.
Okay,
how I see that.
Absolutely. So let's stop with our viewers with this short report about the first part of Nietzsche's very extensive, philosophy, and we'll be back one more time to continue our discussion.
كان فريدريك نيتشه فيلسوفا ألمانيا عاش في القرن التاسع عشر. اعتقد نيتشه أن مع صعود العلم لم تعد النظرية الدينية للعالم تلعب دورا توضيحيا بارزا في حياة الناس، ومع ذلك لا يقدم العلم مجموعة جديدة من القيم لتحل محل القيم الدينية. توقع نيتشه أن الناس بحاجة إلى تحديد مصدر معين من المعنى والقيمة في حياتهم، وإذا لم يتمكنوا من العثور عليه في العلم فسوف يتحولون إلى القومية العدوانية. غير أن آخر ما كان يريده نيتشه هو العودة إلى الدين التقليدي. بدلاً من ذلك سعى لإيجاد طريقة للخروج من العدمية أو رفض جميع المبادئ الدينية والأخلاقية في الاعتقاد بأن الحياة لا معنى لها. كان المخرج بالنسبة له من العدمية كان التأكيد على الجزء الإبداعي والمتعمد للحياة. اعتقد نيتشه أن إرادة السلطة هي دافعنا الأساسي، وهي تتحقق في الاستقلال والهيمنة. هذه الإرادة أقوى من إرادة البقاء وإرادة الجنس، في حين أن إرادة القوة يمكن أن تتجلى من خلال العنف والهيمنة الجسدية. اعتقد نيتشه أن الناس يمكنهم تحويل إرادتهم إلى السلطة إلى الداخل والسعي إلى السيادة على الذات بدلاً من السيادة على الآخرين. بالنسبة لنيتشه فإن فكرة النفس أو الأنا هي مجرد خيال نحوي. وفقاً لنيتشه ما نسميه أنا هو في الحقيقة خليط فوضوي من الإرادات المتنافسة تكافح باستمرار للتغلب على بعضها البعض. لأن التغيير هو الجانب الأساسي في الحياة، يعتبر نيتشه أي وجهة نظر تأخذ الواقع على أنه ثابت وموضوعي. يعتقد نيتشه أن أي فكرة كذلك هي إنكار للحياة، حيث كان يرى أن الفلسفة التي تؤكد الحياة حقا تتبنى التغيير وتدرك أن التغيير هو الثابت الوحيد في العالم.
Dear viewers, after watching this short report about some of the most important ideas of Nietzsche, we're back one more time. So Armand, we watched this report, but before we start to dissect it and analyze it, before you said that there is, like he was really inspired by the ideas of René Descartes. René Descartes is known for his Cartesian doubt, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, je pense donc je suis. So basically, it's everything is there to analyze. Everything there is doubt. There is continuous doubt. And again, another philosopher was Immanuel Kant. And Kant as well, he called for humanity, humanism, and more for values to come from within rather than from without, rather than from a holy text, rather than from a divine scripture. It would come from within. And if we talk about Nietzsche, we talk about nihilism. Do you think that he was not only skeptic, but cynical as well?
Indeed, you actually touched a very important point, Muhammad, because I do believe that, like you said, Kant was the founder of the doubt that Descartes followed or actually continued. And also Kant believed in the inner human content rather than the outer content, as you mentioned. We are followers ourselves, not followers of outside ideology or religion or doctrine. So what we are, what we do is what we think about is right for us. And that's what Nietzsche exactly said as well. So I see there is a huge influence of Kant in Nietzsche's philosophy when it comes to the ability of a man or human being to express his acts in life within his belief of himself. And the goodness comes from inside, and the bad comes out from the inside. So we choose the path, what we think about that is good for us, and we follow it. And the better we think, the better the path is. Or the more positive we think, the more positive the path. In other words, we have, according to Nietzsche, and this is something that related to Kant, we have to replace all the scriptures of a religion with the science, the literature, the art, the music, and so on. So using these elements from us will improve the outside of us without the scriptures of religion. So that's our fuel. An artist is a fuel for himself to be a good person, or to think positively in life, or to achieve what humanity would need from him, as well as a musician or artist. So Nietzsche was influenced definitely by Kant. And actually, I thank you for this remark, because I didn't realize that until you mentioned it now, that he was affected definitely by Kant.
They're all like, there's always this, starting with, like philosophers like Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and so on, there's always an intersection. There's an overlap always, one leads to the other.
Yeah. Ideas and theories of philosophy, usually I picture it as the connected vessels in physics. Same principle. So it's a connected vessels theory.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very similar to the communicating vessels. Absolutely. And to go now to the report and the most important ideas he was talking about. So Nietzsche says that, okay, in the age of science, it is very hard for us to stick to religion, because science is very skeptic. It's not dogmatic in any way. Everything should be analyzed. Everything should be brought to the lab. And but religion always calls for dogma, calls for blind belief. So they can never mix together. But at the same time, although science gives us this idea of relativism and analysis, but it does not give us any true values. So the question here, like, why did he not call for a marriage between science and religion, so that one can complement the other? So instead of having, either or, why don't you sort of integrate them together? So you'd have values from religion, but these values are open as well to skepticism and analysis of science. Why didn't he choose this formula?
Okay, that's very interesting, actually, because let's go back in time a little bit and see how the church in Europe was against scientists all the time. They didn't give them a chance to breathe or to start to express their thoughts until maybe the Victorian age, the 17th, 18th century. After the French Revolution, the whole world in Europe started to change, and all the artists, scientists started to emerge to the surface, because the church was busy with how to stabilize monarchies in Europe at that time. So if we go back in as history, as we said, you will find that religion was always against science. And this was very clear in the relationship of the church with Darwin, for instance. It was a very negative relationship, and it was very repulsive relationship as well. And by the way, Darwin lived in the era of Nietzsche. Freud also, or at least a little bit before, because Nietzsche died in 1900, and at that time Freud was invading Europe with his revolutionary idea in human psychology. So all these people, Darwin, Freud, and before them, were against the church, or the church against them. Actually, they didn't raise the war against the church, but the church raised the war against them. So definitely someone like Nietzsche would never believe that there could be any harmony or relationship or connection between science and religion, or art and religion, because he saw this firsthand, that how church was rejecting all progressive ideas and all science that could shake the foundations of a religion. So Nietzsche was on the other side. He was watching religion as an enemy, not as a companion to science. Yeah.
And so Nietzsche says that, I just want to know if you agree or disagree with this, and then of course your own analysis of it. But he goes and says, humans have this orientation within to dominate. They always aspire for more domination, and they want to control. So they want dominance, actually. They want dominance over others. So he said, like, this is something that's built within. It's hardwired. It's like, you know, it's like in a form of an instinct. So instead of, you know, like just, you know, completely eradicating that, no, we can curb it, or we can redirect it so that instead of aspiring to have dominance over others, we try to have dominance over ourselves and sort of tame ourselves to become the better people. And here he's not saying like really curb or like, you know, oppress our desires and feelings, no, but he's saying to redirect it to make a better self. To what extent do you agree with his ideas and your own analysis, please, at this point?
Okay, what he meant by this was clear, that he wanted to use, as we said earlier, the positive energy, the positive ambition in you to do something good for yourself, and to use this dominance towards building something good, something better. But I doubted that it would be relevant these days, and that's my opinion now, because if we follow exactly what Nietzsche believed in a man that can use his powers, his inner source of domination or hunger for power or hunger for wealth, to do something good out of that, you will find that it doesn't apply these days. This is very idealistic. You're talking about somebody who would be very rich and powerful and would give his money to the poor. Never happens. Maybe we hear about lots of billionaires. They are philanthropists at the end of their life, yes. But do you think that they will give all their fortune to the poor? Oh, I think it's a very small portion. So the inner dominance or the inner hunger for power or for money will not direct to always good things at the end. And we know that most of the big fortunes were made originally, some of them, I don't want to generalize here, some of the big fortunes are made with illegitimate ways at the beginning. So here is the ambition of someone, his hunger for the power and the money led him to commit things that are not legitimate in order to achieve his goal. Mm-hmm. So in that case, Nietzsche, I believe, he was more idealist in that particular thought than we can see nowadays. So it's more idealistic.
Absolutely. And then Nietzsche talks about relativism. So he was so much against bigotry, so you cannot see things from one perspective only. So if you change your perspective, things might seem to be very, very different. And he found that this is imperative. It's not something that is optional. It is something that must be applied and enforced, actually, for all society to do.
So you mean that I want to recap a little bit here, because his theory or ideas about relativity of ideas of behavior is I would say is very clear in his how he explained those things with religion. But again, I would go to religion because religion influenced him very much. He was influenced by religion in his life. That's why he was against the control and dominance of religion as well. So in answer to the relativity issue, he called, for instance, weakness, he said Christianity called it goodness. Purity is a nicer word for sexlessness. For those who live without marriage, like monks and the priests of the Catholic Church, they say they are pure because they do not have sex in their life. So this is what he actually refused. So that we should not cover or contain the real idea or the real term in our thoughts with a different code. So we cannot put as we say in our cultures, we cannot put the coat of a sheep or a lamb on a wolf. So this is a wolf, this is a lamb. So we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic about how to define things in life. Submission to people, it is in the eye of the governments, in the eye of the church, is obedience. However, Nietzsche saw it as submission to people. And exactly, he said that submission to people that we hate. Because when you are obedient to someone you love or you like, a family, that's not submission. That's exchange of love and human feelings and human and fatherhood, motherhood, and sisterhood, or whatever the relationship is. But when you become an obedient person to the government or to the church in his ideas, this is submission, not obedience. So here he wanted to differentiate between the relativity of, in the meaning of, or the interpretation of an act in itself. And I believe this part of his theories or his ideas is one of the most important nowadays, because it will enlighten us to think about things in its right place, in its right form, in its right content, in right context as well. So that's one of his great ideas. Good ideas.
And he also talked about change, like the only true thing in life is change. The only permanent thing in life is change. And he was against any kind of stagnant thoughts, like, things should always go forward. He was very progressive. Things should always change. So any form of conservatism. Was this again inspired by his opposition to religion, in your opinion?
Well, this change is very much in line with all what we mentioned earlier. So it is in line with his detest of the relative meanings of things, or the relativity in defining things. It's in line with his ideas about how we should grow from inside out to out in a positive way. And I believe that, yes, of course, the change is a must. And we should not forget that he was a man of science as well, not as a scientist, but he believed in science over the other religious scripts. So, and he believed in art, very much in art actually as well. So he found out that the most important ingredient in progression is change. If you cannot change, you cannot progress. Very simple. And in comparison to religion is never changing. Religion is very stagnant. Nobody can even touch the religion or change it nowadays, or even before that, because he would be excommunicated right away, just by being criticizing even the religion. So Nietzsche was very much in line with all his ideas that lead to the change. Change is a must. Change is the only way to progress in life. And by the way, the only reality in life is change. Changing every day. Weather changes. People change.
Here, I don't know, maybe it's rhetorical or like, I don't know, but it's just something I really have to ask here. Why do we always see that those people who think out of the box, or like they would perish, their ideas would perish, but the very stagnant and very conservative ones would linger? Unfortunately, these ideas, like if we're talking about the masses, the majority of the people, these ideas would just be unknown to them, or they would hear about it, but it would very rapidly sink into oblivion. Why is the case? Is it like some kind of malformation within us as humans, or within religious institutes, within political institutes? Where's the glitch here? Where's the problem?
According to my readings in history, in sociology and theology, we can realize that mankind, when they started to form their own kind of steady life or in groups, in kind of tribes around surrounding a river or small nomads in a desert that walk together. They wanted to have kind of support in this life. They are not now hunters like used to be, and they cannot live day to day with don't know what they are getting, but they needed a protector. They needed somebody who would look after them. And that's where the idea of religion started. So the need of protection and the fear of the unknown. And that's very interesting because I had a discussion yesterday with a friend, and we were talking about why she sees that religion is very important. Of course, everybody has I respect everybody's ideas, and she believed that it is a protection from the unknown because her most fear is the unknown. And by the way, the unknown, the fear of unknown is in the mind of the masses. Everybody is worried about tomorrow, about how he could go to weather in a storm, how he could guarantee that he would not be fired tomorrow from his job or her job, how a mother would manage to finish duties of home and take care of kids without being hit by any unknown thing in life. The unknown is unlimited. The unknown is huge. Everything in life is unknown. So the fear of the unknown that created this glitch in us, if you call it a glitch, we need also the protector. Protect us from the unknown. So definitely, it is something that was created by us to the extent that we believed in it.
And it's relativism again. Like, most of the atrocities that we've seen throughout history came from ethnocentrism, and today, until today, we have.
Yes.
So ethnocentrism, things like fascism and if you militant thought and all these things come from ethnocentrism. You just live in your ethnic silo, your ethnic ghetto, and you disdain. You treat all others with disdain, and you exalt yourself above others. But speaking of relativism and Nietzsche here, like if he's talking about relativism, do you think that Nietzsche was calling also for cultural relativism, that things should not be seen from one through like the glasses of one culture only? Because as we'll be touching in the next part, in part 2, is because Nietzsche is usually accused of being the father of Nazism and fascism and so on. So do you think that these are just false allegations against the man, and he was actually calling for exactly the opposite? Instead of fascism and Nazism, he was calling for cultural relativism as well?
Indeed, that was one of the criticism that was directed to Nietzsche, that his ideas about relativism was the influence of fascism, because it's because of our own thoughts of ourselves, we become what we want to be. For instance, it's also, if we think of ourselves that we are the most powerful nation, then we have to dominate. If I think myself I'm the most important person in the company, then I have to get rid of the other employees around me. But that is completely wrong in terms of our understanding to Nietzsche. Nietzsche was ideal. Nietzsche was looking for some kind of reconciliation with oneself and life. This reconciliation is to give away the things that would hinder your progress. He didn't want us to stay where we are stagnant, as we said earlier. He wants us to progress. In order to progress, progression always represents bright side of future, because it is the word itself expresses itself. It is progression. Progress means leave behind us the bad things and go to better concepts, better way of life. And that criticism that was directed to Nietzsche, that his ideas might have affected the rise of fascism in Germany, especially in that time, in Spain, and was, in my opinion, is irrelevant, completely, because the man was idealist.
So you think he was pro-cultural relativism? You think?
Yes, it's a culture. And don't forget one thing, Muhammad, as well. fascism always used religion as one of its supporters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he was
Extreme
against religion.
nationalism.
Yes,
Yeah.
nationalism is based on religion and race, ethnic background, but they combine them together.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see that in Hitler for himself. He was a fascist, and he believed in the Aryan race, but also he was believed only for Christians. He refused Jews to be part of his empire.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure if he reached the Middle East, he will also refuse Muslims as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a beginning. But thanks to Montgomery, he stopped him in Alamein. So yeah, definitely, no, this was misunderstood for Nietzsche. He's an idealist. He's a progressive person, and he would take this towards cultural change, not to racism or kind of dogma.
Last but never least, whenever we mention Nietzsche, we mention nihilism. You can never say Nietzsche without nihilism. But there are two schools of thought, actually, for people who analyze his thoughts. Some people say that he was actually 100% pro-nihilism, while others say it's on the contrary. No, he was against nihilism. He's saying these thoughts to find a meaning for life. And so, like, life would just not be an absurd place or a meaningless place. Which side are you taking? Like, do you think he's pro-nihilism or against nihilism?
That's a very clever idea, Mohammed. That's a very clever point to put for discussion. I see actually Nietzsche is in the middle. He is someone who sees life is so absurd, because that's why we have to leave it to go to another kind of, we change ourselves to be better. At the same time, he also, in his writings, his thoughts, ideas, he sees that what we have reached in humanity is nothing, is something that is not encouraging us to continue life like this. That's how I see Nietzsche. Nietzsche is in between. And those different opinions, the one that says he's completely with nihilism, the other one says, no, he's far from nihilism. No, I think he's in between, but leaning towards nihilism more. It is the essence of philosophers. Philosophers or deep thinkers, they always tend to be nihilist, because it justifies what they're saying. Otherwise, if we are not believing in nihilism, or we are completely submissive to the dogmas of religion, let's say, then we're going to be followers all the time, like a herd. And even Freud himself, I'm sorry, Nietzsche, because Freud said the same thing actually. But I'm referring to Nietzsche now. He's our topic. Nietzsche, in one of his writings, I can't remember which book, he said that human beings are like the herd. They want to follow. They cannot leave the herd, otherwise they think they'll be lost. So again, that leads us to the idea of, if you are against nihilism, then you are in a herd that follows one idea, one shepherd, one God, if you call it.
He said actually, if you do not create your own values, you will be just prey for extreme nationalism, and you would be just following blindly in the crowd of.
And he never mentioned in his writings anything about the ethnicity, or I can't remember that he reached that part of thinking. I'm not sure about this, to be honest. But I don't think he mentioned the ethnicities, but he focused on the behavior of man in a herd.
Yeah, he talked about, yes, like he said that if you do not have these values, you might resort to extreme nationalism without naming a specific race or a specific.
Yeah, because that means he was not with certain race or certain national status. Just he was.
Yeah, and this is usually the case that with religion or with extreme nationalism and so on, many things are taken out of context, and they are tweaked and they're twisted and turned to serve someone's purpose.
That's exactly what he talked about relativism as well. Yes,
absolutely.
And by the way, we are talking about Nietzsche. Nietzsche is one of the most controversial philosophers of the history. And there are so many ways to interpret what he said. We're trying here to look at the moderate side of it. Because Nietzsche himself, as we said, there is philosophy was before Nietzsche and after Nietzsche. That's what the philosophy is. So we are dealing with the most important person who shaped the future of philosophy.
Absolutely, and definitely we'll be talking much more about him in our next part. Ahmad Barsoum, thank you very much for being with us tonight, and really looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Mohammed, and I'm always delighted to be here with you and your audience, of course. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you very much, Ahmad. Thank you. And dear viewers, if we were sort of to recap here, maybe let me put it in an ironic way that we talked about religion. So philosophy are like, beads of a rosary. So they are all connected and one leads to the other. So we started off at the very beginning with allegory of the cave for Plato, and the whole idea of being in a cave, whether you put yourself in a cave or you're put by someone in a cave, and you are just leaving the entire world and you are encapsulating yourself inside a cave, inside your own comfort zone. But there's definitely a very big price to that, because as long as you stay in a cave, you have bonds and shackles that hold you to that place that would always prevent you from turning around and seeing what's beyond and from having any form of insight. And most of the time, you are just a puppet in that cave, and there are puppeteers behind the scenes that keep projecting false images to you to control you and to manipulate you. And maybe in a different form of analysis, Nietzsche took it again, that we should not be prey and we should not be the victims of these predators, whether they are theologians, whether they're clergy, whether they are like politicians or whatnot. And so everything should be tested, everything should be thought about, and again, all around the world, we have many different religions, but and also there are atheists, but I strongly doubt that anyone would tell you that lying is good, or stealing is good, or killing is good. Unless they're a psychopath or something, like they have some kind of a mental problem. But the absolute majority of people would have complete consensus about the major sins, if you want to call them, or the major taboos, or the major negative things, whether they believe or they disbelieve. So it's not basically only belief that drives people to do this or that. It's not the belief. It's one might argue it's something within. It's something within inside you, if you want to call it like conscience or humanity or whatever. So because as long as we have this, if you want to just say that it's one truth and no other, the truth, I possess the truth and you don't, then clash of civilizations, clash of cultures, clash of religions will be inevitable, and everyone is losing. And we've seen since the dawn of time until today, the number of innocent people who died for all of these fanatic ideas, who refuse change, who refuse relativity. Dear viewers, until we meet again, I wish you have a very pleasant time. Thanks for watching.